worth something, maybe she would talk to Tobila about selling it. Even with Anika's study allowance and cheap board at Tobila's house, she found it a struggle to make ends meet. It had been a struggle ever since she'd given up hairdressing and become a part-time university student with a part-time drafting job that could go belly up at any time. Interest rates were that high. Yet there was so much emotional baggage attached, limpet-like, to that portrait of the auburn-haired woman. Anika loved having her on the wall at the foot of her bed. She loved waking up to see her reflecting the morning light and her own radiance, that glow that the artist had captured with so many small brushstrokes laden with colour. The woman in the portrait reminded Anika of home. That particular afternoon when she'd left Budapest. That afternoon when her father, watched closely by her grandmother Nyenye, had thrust the painting into her hands and later into the bottom of her suitcase where it had fitted perfectly. Now it was her legacy from Tobila, and she couldn't ever think of getting rid of it. Could she? Still, she would love to learn who the artist was. The signature at the bottom of the picture was nothing more than an illegible scribble. Tobila ripped out the advertisement from the paper and handed it to Anika. "I'd love to know more about it too," she said. "I'm happy to go," Anika said, and she was, although she knew from Tobila's expression that she had no choice in the matter. In the city centre, Anika alighted from the bus and walked towards Macquarie Street. It was already hot, and her shirt was beginning to stick to her back, and even her parcel containing the portrait felt warm. She hurried on to the green oasis of the Domain and the dense shade of the Moreton Bay fig trees. On the far side of the park was the art gallery. Its entrance was a classical Greek temple stuck onto high sandstone walls so blank they might have hidden a prison. Bronze men on horseback stood guard at the front. Too early, Anika perched in some shade on the sandstone steps, still deliciously cool, and waited for the gallery to open. "Assessments are downstairs," the cloakroom attendant told her when she was finally admitted. A wafer-thin man, he had trouble understanding her, though she enunciated impeccably, sounding out every consonant and paying attention to her vowels. He told her to unwrap her package and leave the paper and cardboard with him. When she bent over to pick up the string that had fallen onto the floor, she caught him peering down the front of her shirt. The escalator led to a basement where there was an empty space and a long counter with nobody behind it. After a couple of seconds, a large man strode across from the bottom of the escalator. He was built like an athlete, the sort who lifts weights and swims competitively. Standing next to her, he said, "Are you the Q?" "A queue of one." "Of two now?" While the skin under his eyes was like crumpled tissue paper, the overall impression was of boyishness. "What are you here for?" "Same as you, probably," she said, smiling. "Is that a painting?" "My mother persuaded me to bring it in for her." The bright blue shirt he was wearing exactly matched his eyes. "She's convinced it's by Elliot Gruner. My name's Jono, by the way." Anika was about to ask who Elliot Gruner was when a kind-faced elderly woman joined them. Although out of breath, she immediately began to talk, but it was impossible for Anika to make out any of the words. Closely watching her lips didn't help. It could have been another language she was speaking, though Jono seemed to understand what she was saying. Anika drifted into a reverie, broken only by the appearance of a curator behind the counter. Apart from his golden skin, he was all in black. Black shirt and black trousers, black hair, and eyes so dark it was impossible to distinguish iris from pupil. Of medium height, he was so even-featured he might have been formed on an assembly line. The expression on his face was far from welcoming, she thought. His nose was raised in the air the better to look down on her. Suddenly nervous, or perhaps it was his unfriendliness that upset her, she said, "I'm sorry I interrupted your tea break. There's a crumb or something on your top lip." This disconcerted him. This removed the supercilious expression from his face. From his trouser pocket, he pulled out a red handkerchief neatly.